is a parasitic infection which is transmitted by mosquito bites, a particular type of mosquito, Anopheline mosquitoes, and the parasite invades the liver first and then the bloodstream, where it invades the red blood cells, and the disease is caused by the destruction of the red blood cells by the parasites. Approximately 300 million cases of malaria that occur a year globally, and there's about 600 to 700,000 estimated deaths. About 30 million travellers going to malaria endemic areas are at risk of getting malaria. In Australia, we usually only have about 600 to 1,000 cases of malaria a year.
Ronald Ian Barclay, I'm a civil engineer and I'm semi-retired. Well, I've actually worked in an awful lot of places, but I've only been to two that have had malaria, and both in the same period. First, I was actually on chloroquine, which was the standard prophylaxis, as they call it back then, for you going into malarial areas. Tried to avoid getting bitten by the mosquitoes. After 2 trips up there, I was back in Australia, and it came on very quickly over the space of about 4 or 6 hours, I suppose. I felt crook just after lunch, early afternoon, and by 10 o'clock that night I was in bed with a raging temperature and sweats and what have you. And I was pretty sure I had malaria. Went to the doctor the next day, did a blood test, and 24 hours later said, yes, you do. I put me on something that cleared it up in a couple of days. But I had the effects of that particular strain, which was a nasty, nasty strain. I had a temperature just under 105, but I lost 10 kilos and I was off work for about 3 weeks. It was a nasty strain that I had and really knocked me around.
So the difference between treatment of malaria and prevention of malaria is that treatment, obviously, you give people medication to cure them of the infection. Now with falciparum malaria, that's universally fatal if untreated in travellers or people who have no immunity. Prevention is giving people medications or giving them advice on what to do to prevent them from getting malaria. Now, prevention of mosquito bites is obviously the most important thing to advise people to do, because if you don't get bitten by mosquitoes, you can't get malaria. Most people get malaria because they get bitten by mosquitoes and they haven't been taking anti-malarial preventative measures, or the risk is so high they haven't even been taking the anti-malarial drugs which are prescribed to prevent malaria. Now, tefenaquine, interestingly, has been around for a long period of time and was developed by the US military together with another pharmaceutical company. But it wasn't used for a long period of time, partly for a number of reasons. There were other drugs that could be used, and also people were quite comfortable with those drugs. Unfortunately, with increasing resistance to anti-malarial medications, the options for giving people drugs that will prevent malaria have become fewer and fewer. And some of the drugs, for example, a drug like mefloquine, is associated with quite a lot of undesirable side effects. So people are looking for alternatives.
So for the tefenaquine long-term safety study, what we're evaluating is the safety of taking this drug on a regular period, once a week for a year. Now, tefenaquine is intended to be a prevention for malaria. Malaria is a devastating disease, global significance, and the world needs better preventatives for this condition, particularly for folks who are spending long periods of time in areas where there's a high risk of contracting malaria. And so what we're hoping to evaluate through this study is the safety profile of this drug in healthy volunteers taking this drug regularly for up to 12 months. To date, this compound has already been extensively studied in over 4,000 volunteers. We know the safety profile up to a period of 6 months, and what we're hoping to do is extend that period of observation up to 12 months to supplement the submission of this drug through the regulatory bodies around the world.
The other big reason why anti-malarials for prevention fail, if people are taking them, is poor compliance. And so some medications require daily dosage, for example, doxycycline and a drug called atovaquone proguanil, marketed originally as Malaria, whereas mefloquine is taken weekly and tafenoquine as well is also taken weekly. And in general, my preference is to give a drug that is given weekly rather than daily, because if you consider someone's going away for a significant period of time, they have to take medication for every day. It's a large number of medications that they have to take. So the weekly drug becomes a little bit easy because you don't have to take as many of them away with you.
Individuals interested in being on this study can reach out to us through our website, contact one of our recruiting staff, who will then be in touch with a series of questions just to qualify that those folks can actually participate in this trial. If they make it past that stage, they'll be invited in for a more comprehensive screening examination at our specialist clinic here at Sir Charles Gairdner Hospital. Every participant on the study will have an opportunity to review the prior literature about this drug, ask questions, or get comfortable with what we're asking in the study, which is what we describe as the consent process. And once individuals have made it onto the study, they'll be asked to take the tablet, which for a loading dose will be three times in the initial visit. Then they'll be asked to take that drug regularly on a period of every week for a year. And through that period of 12 months, there'll be 7 visits to our clinic for evaluation and follow-up. So each time a participant comes to our clinic, either for the initial screening or through the follow-up phases, we'll be performing some safety assessments, which is like going to your GP and getting a health check. We'll be looking at things like your vital signs, blood pressure, might take some blood samples as well. We'll be looking at the health conditions of the eye and overall well-being.
Hi, my name's Andrew and I've been on the tafenoquine trial for the last 5 weeks and it's been going fairly smoothly. I decided to participate in this trial because at the time I was looking for a job and I saw linear clinical trials pop up in one of the job feeds and I thought that was a great way to earn a little bit of money and experience what it was like to be part of a clinical trial. My experience with the linear clinical team was really quite good. They were very friendly people, very approachable. I could ask all the questions that I wanted to and they seemed to have endless amount of time and patience for me. None of the tests are overly confronting or intrusive. The best thing about being on the trial so far is that it's a very easy trial to be on and it's well paid.
So why participate on this study? So on one hand, all participants will be compensated financially. There's tax-free income that we will provide for the time and inconvenience that the study requires. But I guess perhaps more interesting is the chance to participate in the drug development process for a drug with really high global need. And of course, many of the participants who might be interested in this study are likely the type of people who want to travel to places around the world where malaria might be an issue, and this drug someday might prevent you from contracting that horrible disease.